It was 2 a.m. Ibrahim Traoré was still in his office. Phones were ringing non-stop. The central bank president, the economy minister, and several key advisors were all gathered in an emergency meet. Terrible news flashed across the screen. French banks had frozen money transfers to Burkina Faso. The IMF had suspended loan payments. The CFA Franc was being pulled from the market. The threat of an economic collapse loomed just hours away. Traoré slammed his fist on the table. "This is how they've controlled us for years," he said. "Even our money isn't truly ours." He turned to his team and laid out a plan so bold, the entire room fell silent. "We can't do this," the finance minister said. "No one's ever tried it." Traoré gave a faint smile. "Then we'll be the first." The tension inside the presidential palace was thick. Outside, the city lights of Ouagadougou glowed peacefully, but inside, Burkina Faso's fate hung in the balance. Traoré walked to the window, hands behind his back, eyes scanning the night. "How much in reserves do we have?" he asked, not turning around. Dr. Amina Khanate, the central bank president, flipped through her file. "Officially, for $100 million. But most of it's in accounts in Paris. We can't access it." "And gold?" Traoré asked. "We have 78 tons of registered gold reserves," she replied, then paused. "But that too is in France." Traoré nodded with a bitter smile. "Of course it is." The economy minister, Ousmane Sonko, shifted uneasily in his seat. "Mr. President, you have to understand the seriousness of this. You're talking about leaving the West African Economic Union. Rejecting the CFA Franc could be economic suicide." "Suicide?" Traoré turned sharply, his eyes burning. "Or liberation? Tell me, Sonko, how can we be an independent nation if we can't even print our own money?" "The CFA Franc is the last chain of colonization." Sonko raised his hands in protest. "But all of West Africa uses this system. Mali, Niger, Senegal. And look at them," Traoré cut in. "All still trapped in poverty. Do you know why? Because every time we print a banknote, we have to deposit dollars into the French treasury. We pay them to use our own money. How is that freedom?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right, but the fear of the unknown held them back. For 70 years, West African nations had used the CFA Franc, a colonial era currency. Independence had been symbolic. The real control still sat in Paris. Dr. Khanate took a deep breath. "Mr. President, you are right. But practically, what can we do? We don't have the infrastructure to launch our own currency. No printing presses. And if people panic and start withdrawing money tomorrow..." Traoré placed a file on the table. "That's why I've been secretly working on this for the past 3 months." Everyone leaned in. "Operation Sankara," the file read. "Thomas Sankara's unfinished dream," Traoré said. "Financial independence." He opened the file. Inside were detailed blueprints for a new currency to replace the CFA Franc, the Burkina Gold. "This can't work," the finance minister stuttered. "We don't have enough foreign reserves." And without international recognition, Traoré reached into his pocket and pulled out a shiny gold-colored coin. One side had a baobab tree, the other, a map of Burkina Faso. "This is the prototype," he said. "Burkina Gold, made from 100% domestic gold mined, refined, and minted here." Dr. Khanate frowned. "But our mines are controlled by foreign companies. They monitor all gold exports." "Not anymore," Traoré said, his eyes shining. The economy minister stood up in shock. You've nationalized the gold mines officially." "It happens tomorrow morning," Traoré replied calmly. "But the operation began 3 hours ago. The army is already in control. French and American company executives are being respectfully escorted to the border." Everyone stared in disbelief. It was a bold move, risky, but smart. "What about sanctions, boycotts?" asked Dr. Khanate. "The West will try to crush." "US? Of course they will," Traoré nodded. "But to punish us, they first need access to us. And that brings us to phase 2. He pressed a button. A world map appeared on the screen. Several countries were highlighted: Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, India, Brazil. "For the last 6 months, we've been making quiet deals with these countries," he explained. Direct trade in our own currencies, no dollar, no euro. We'll sell gold directly to them, and in return, they'll give us the tech and supplies we need. The economy minister's voice trembled. I didn't know any of this. You didn't need to. Traoré said gently, because if the French had gotten even a hint of this, the financial blockade we're facing today didn't just begin overnight. It was set in motion months ago. Dr. Khanate held the gold coin up to the light. It's beautiful, she said softly, but will people really accept it? Habits don't change so easily. Traoré smiled. People have been storing gold at jewelry shops for years. We're offering them something with real value, not just printed paper. But this, he said, opening another file, this is the real game changer. Inside were designs for a digital wallet. The Burkina Digital Wallet, Traoré announced. A free mobile app for every citizen. Gold-backed digital currency. Fully transparent, secure, and completely independent from Western banks. The finance minister shook his head. This is insane and brilliant, but how do we convince the people? Just then, Traoré's assistant stepped in. Mr. President, the connection is ready. Traoré turned to his team. Convince the people. Let me show you. The large screen lit up. On it appeared the leaders of 5 African nations: Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin. Presidents. Traoré began. I believe you've all received the same message today. Once again, the West has used its economic weapon against us. But this time we're ready. I want to share our plan. 2 hours later, as the call ended, the room felt different. The fear was gone. In its place, determination. Traoré looked around at his team as the first light of dawn broke outside. A new day is coming, he said, not just in Ouagadougou, but across Africa. Dr. Khanate closed her laptop. Will you make the announcement to the public tomorrow morning? Traoré shook his head. No, I'll do it now. People should know the truth before they walk into a bank. They should feel pride, not panic. His request for an emergency national broadcast was approved within minutes. As his team made preparations, Traoré stood by the window, holding the gold coin in his hand one last time. It shimmered in the early sunlight. Thomas Sankara, he whispered, as if speaking to the late revolutionary's spirit. Today, we finish what you started. 6:30 a.m. As people across Burkina Faso prepared their breakfasts, they were surprised to see President Traoré appear on their screens, dressed in his military uniform. He looked calm, but there was fire in his eyes. People of Burkina Faso, he began, I speak to you this morning with an urgent message. Last night, French banks and Western financial institutions launched an economic war against us. They cut off our access to our own money. They canceled transfers. They blocked our loans. In homes, cafes, and shops, people leaned closer to their screens, concerned but listening. Do you know why they did this? Traoré asked. Because we want independence. Because we want control over our own resources. Because we say that Burkina Faso belongs to the Burkinabe. The camera zoomed in as he held up the gold coin. From today, we stop using the colonial currency, the CFA Franc. We begin using our own money, the Burkina Gold, a currency backed by 100% local gold, with real value. Then he held up his mobile phone. And this is the Burkina Digital Wallet. It will be available to every citizen for free. You won't need banks to access your money. Your digital gold will be in your pocket. People watched in stunned silence. Some were nervous, but others were filled with hope. As if reading their thoughts, Traoré continued, don't worry. All the money in your CFA Franc accounts will be converted into Burkina Gold at twice the value. No one will lose. Everyone will gain. Gasps, then cheers, rippled across the country. Most importantly, he said, we will control our money. We will shape our own future. And we are not alone. The screen split. Next to him appeared the presidents of Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin. Each one nodded. We're all leaving the CFA Franc today together and switching to our own gold-backed currencies. He ended with a final message. This is not a revolution. This is an evolution. The final step toward true independence. Today, we are finally free. The moment his speech ended, something amazing began to unfold. Instead of panic, people started downloading the Burkina Digital Wallet. They explored the app. It was simple, smooth, and most importantly theirs. But the biggest shock wasn't. In Ouagadougou, 7:45 a.m., Paris, at the French Central Bank, chaos erupted during an emergency meeting. The executive in charge of African operations stared at his screen, pale and trembling. 6 countries, all exited the system at once, he whispered. This was a coordinated move, and it just changed everything. More. What more? The French bank president asked impatiently. His assistant replied, the digital wallets have been downloaded millions of times in just a few hours. People are actually accepting it. There's no panic, no run on the banks. The president grabbed his phone. I need to call the Ministry of Finance. We have to impose sanctions immediately. The ministry is already calling, the assistant said, handing over the phone. On the line, a panicked voice shouted, the mines are gone, energy agreements have been cancelled, military base permissions revoked, we're losing control of all of West Africa. Meanwhile, in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traoré sat calmly in his office, watching the world react. As expected, Western media was predicting chaos. Economic collapse begins in Africa. West African countries commit financial suicide. Traoré condemns his people to starvation, but unexpectedly, messages of support began pouring in from Russia, China, India, Turkey, Brazil, South Africa, all offering congratulations, partnerships, and promises to recognize the gold-backed currency. Dr. Khanate entered the room with excitement. You won't believe it, Mr. President. 4 million people have downloaded the app. That's almost 1/5 of our population. Traoré smiled. People have tasted freedom, Khanate. There's no going back now. She continued, there are thousands of downloads coming from other African countries to Ghana, Congo, Senegal. Everyone's talking about us. 1 week later, Traoré stood in a small village square, surrounded by curious villagers. One elderly farmer held out his phone. I don't know how to use this, Mr. President, he said shyly. Traoré sat beside him and smiled warmly. Let me show you. He gently guided the man's fingers. See? Tap here to open your wallet. This number shows how many Burkina Gold coins you have. The old man's eyes sparkled. So, this is the real value of my money. Yes, Baba, Traoré nodded. And no one can freeze your account or block your transfers anymore. This is your freedom. The old man clutched the phone to his chest. For the first time, he whispered, I feel like my money is safe with me. That simple sentence captured everything Traoré had fought for. This wasn't just about money, it was psychological freedom. Analysts at the IMF and World Bank had predicted that Burkina Faso wouldn't last even a few weeks. But 1 month passed, and the economy still stood. 2 months in, trade started growing. 3 months later, Traoré was invited to the BRICS summit in Moscow. There, world leaders listened closely. The gold standard was abandoned 50 years ago. Said the Russian leader, you're bringing it back. That's quite bold. We're not going back. Traoré replied, we're moving forward digital gold, backed by our own resources. This is next generation independence. The Chinese leader nodded. Your digital wallet tech is impressive. It could become an alternative model for global finance. After the summit, Traoré signed landmark deals, energy and defense partnerships with Rossiatech and infrastructure, projects with Keen Agriculture, and medicine programs with India, food security cooperation with Brazil education, and industry alliances with Turkey. Western headlines panicked. Burkina Faso turning away from the West. Traoré's dangerous game. But Traoré only smiled. We're not turning away from the West. He told Dr. Khanate, we're turning towards the world. We don't have one master anymore, we have many partners. He glanced at his phone. The Burkina digital wallet was glowing on screen. 12 million active users, 2 million daily transaction. Spread across 6 countries. Ashero downtime. 0 hacks. 6 months later, the gold-backed currency had evolved into something bigger, the African gold. 14 African countries had now joined the system. The old CFA Franc had officially faded into history. Ibrahim Traoré was no longer just a national leader. He had become a symbol, a pioneer for all of Africa. One morning, standing at the inauguration of the new central bank of Burkina Faso, Traoré addressed the nation. Behind him stood towering gold-plated doors. Inside, the country's reclaimed gold reserves were finally stored on home soil. Today, we're not just opening a building, he said. We're opening a new chapter in our history. Our gold no longer sits in foreign vaults. It's here, with us, under our control. As the crowd applauded, a woman standing quietly in the back wiped away tears. She was Thomas Sankara's widow. He would have loved to see this, she whispered, shaking Traoré's hand. Financial freedom was his dream. We're just bringing his dream to life, Traoré said gently. But we were only able to do this because of the seeds he planted. Outside the city, young engineers worked at the newly launched Burkina Technology Center. They were developing an upgraded version of the digital wallet app faster, more secure, blockchain-powered, and 100% African-built. Burkina Faso hadn't just launched a currency, it had built an entire ecosystem. From mining and refining to digital infrastructure and cybersecurity. At an IMF press conference, the president wore a forced smile. Our dialogue with Burkina Faso and its allies continues, she said. We're studying their new system closely. Translation: we can't stop them anymore. We have to adjust. The French president began an urgent Africa tour, promising a new beginning. But no one was buying it anymore. At one press briefing, an African journalist boldly asked, "How do you see West Africa's shift to a gold-backed currency?" The French leader forced a grin. "We respect their independent decisions, but I must warn them about the risks." He was cut off by laughter. 1 year later, United Nations General Assembly Ibrahim Traoré took the podium. His speech was short but unforgettable. 1 year ago, 6 countries took a leap of faith. Today, 22 African nations use the United African Gold. Inflation is down. Trade is up. Our tech investment has tripled. Western diplomats shifted in their seats. They told us we couldn't do it, Traoré said. That we'd collapse, that we'd starve. He smiled. We didn't argue. We just did it. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. An African nation had finally broken the chains of economic colonization, and this was only the beginning.